Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. And today's guest is Danny Mizrahi. Hi, Danny.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm very happy to have you on this podcast. We're going to have a great conversation. Danny is the co-founder of two companies, Contango IT, which is an IT service, IT support company. And then we have also GRSee, which is a cybersecurity compliance company. And you are located in New York. And we got introduced by Michael Oberthur, and he from Supporting Strategies Bookkeeping. And he said, you have to talk to Danny. When I interviewed him for my podcast, I asked him, okay, who should I interview next? And he said, you got to talk to Danny. Danny is super successful. He's so well known in New York. He can talk about systems and systematizing and growing and scaling. And so that's why I'm so excited to have you. Hopefully it wasn't like too much of a pressure on the introduction.
Yeah, right. Now, how am I supposed to live up to that? No, I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. So first of all, let's explain our listeners, what does it mean? What does Contango mean? I mean, I know because you told me and I love that story. So tell me about Contango.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was the way the story goes, and I'll try to make it brief. Basically after getting kicked out of my third summer camp because I hated summer camp, and now I'm a parent and I know why I kept getting sent back to summer camp, because it would be very nice to have the summers off at this point. But I wasn't summer camp material. I wanted to work really badly. So my dad put me in the pits of the gold futures options pits on Wall Street, and that's where I learned the word Contango. Contango is a commodities expression. It means the future is higher than the present. And it was my AOL screen name. Maybe people on this call don't know what AOL is. I'm sharing my age, but my AOL screen name was Contango. I band name Contango. When it started time to start the company, it just kept making sense because it really does mean the future is higher than the present. And it's certainly our first core value, which is to always improve. Just everyone around us who wants to be improving.
Good. So Contango is the future is higher than the present. I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, good. So you are obviously the expert when it comes to IT systems and cybersecurity. And, we discussed it a little bit before the podcast, and both of us thought it would be a good idea to actually talk about cybersecurity because there are so many. First of all, there is this acronym that goes around, right? The GRSee, that we have to figure out what is it, right? And then we hear the word compliance all the time. What is compliance? Like, how would I know as a small business that I am in compliance? And what are the actions that actually you need to be doing as a small business owner in order to be in compliance, in order to be actually not just in compliance, but actually keep your data secure, right? So you have, what are the real risks in terms of cybersecurity, and what do we need to know as small business owners, so small, medium-sized business owners, so we can actually make sure we are in compliance and we actually the data is secured, and we are, have the best of our customers in mind. So let's try to systematize it, break it down into systems and process of what do we need to do. So first of all, what is your view on cybersecurity?
Well, I'll tell you the biggest thing, and I speak a lot on cybersecurity compliance 101, kind of just what are the basics, and the basics of compliance are also the same as the basics in general cybersecurity for IT companies. And most people, and I guess that's a good place to start, is most people, when they hear the word cybersecurity, it's actually not cybersecurity. It's just really, really good IT. And cybersecurity, in my mind, is really the compliance aspect. So you went a lot of different directions there in the question. So I'm trying to figure out which way to go. But I guess
we were just umbrellas, putting it out there, and then we're going to break it down into a system that our listeners can actually understand. So, okay, we cleared up cybersecurity. So now you said, okay, it's really good IT systems in place. So let's start there. What are the IT systems that need to be in place?
Sure. And that is a really great question. And so I always kind of teach on, a couple basics that people can take away to make sure that they're doing at least the basics on cybersecurity, which are not expensive. You can get it done on your own even, right? So, the first thing that comes to mind for me, and it's also part of every compliance requirement, is two-factor authentication. So, maybe pretty standard these days, but you'd be surprised how many businesses I know that are not doing two-factor authentication for everything. I mean, certainly you're doing it because you have to on bank accounts and things like that. But some people are still not doing that for email. And that's sad because, I could run a dark web report right now, and about 99% of the time I could tell people their passwords on the fly, via the dark web. So, you could assume that your passwords are probably floating out there somewhere, especially, everyone basically uses the same password everywhere. Maybe they change it a little bit. Generally use the same password everywhere, unfortunately. And so,
that's another thing right there is don't use the same password for everything. So the two-factor authentication, and it's a whole word to pronounce.
Yeah, that would be one thing,
And then don't use the same password for everything.
Yeah, and then I would say that after that is definitely security awareness training. So it's mandatory pretty much in every state now for businesses to make sure that their staff does what's called security awareness training. And what is that? That's really watching videos and taking tests on spoofing and phishing and what's a real website, what's a real email, what's a fake website, when to follow up with a call, when to put in your data, what to look for, how to look for certain things. So, with our clients, all of them have to watch certain videos. Our clients, staff and their end users have to watch videos. They have to take the tests that come with the videos. And every single 2 weeks, they'll get a random email, not all at the same time, obviously, but random emails that look phenomenal in terms of and I'll be honest, I'm the biggest offender in my organization. I got an email. I'm like, oh, let me just click on it and UPS tracking. And then it pops up and it says, luckily we're the good guys. And this is Contango IT's, security training program. And here's more videos that you need to watch to make sure you don't do that again when it could be really malicious, right? So security awareness training is definitely mandatory in pretty much every state, everyone's privacy policies these days. Let's talk about
it for a second in terms of the mandatory. So what size business do you have to be in order for you to have it as a mandatory?
One person. Yeah, I mean, one person business. That's a very easy answer to me.
So
everyone should know.
Listening right now and they want to know where would they get that program? Where would they get those videos?
Well, they should ask their IT company, and their IT company should have it automated at this point. Like, we have it automated, and since it's so important, most IT companies have a program for it. If you want to DIY
right now, if they want to contact you right now, what would they do? How do they contact?
Well, sure. ContangoIT.com or, my email, dm@ContangoIT.com, or just, not that I'm that popular, but you could put in Danny Mizrahi and Contango on Google and it'll probably show up on LinkedIn, me and anyone else, right? Nothing crazy. And you could reach out there. But I will say, KnowBe4, there's a company called KnowBe4 that does security awareness training. A lot of people I know do it themselves on KnowBe4, and you could Google KnowBe4 security awareness training and they have some good programs, but really the IT company should be managing that for you and checking in on it. Like, our CIOs will reach out to the clients and say, hey, these end users are off track. Can you call them or ask them to get back on track in terms of their training? Because this is a training issue, and 90-something% of threats are just resolved with those two, right? Phishing, spoofing training, security awareness training, and two-factor authentication really does resolve about most of them. After that, I would say having a handle on all the machines and encryption in general, right? So a lot of people think that, I have this laptop, I'm running around with it, and if it gets lost, it's no big deal because I have to log in with my username and password. But what people don't realize is that if the hard drive is not encrypted, you just take out the hard drive and look at the data. People are like, no way, you could actually do that, and it comes standard on Macs, and it doesn't come standard, but the software comes standard on Macs and PCs to enable hard drive encryption. And so our company, and not just our company, but most IT companies that are, good at what they do, have everything in dashboards, right? Getting back to systems and processes, et cetera. So every single computer that we manage is in a dashboard basically with these alerts that come up. And if it hasn't, had a security patch, that's the next thing, right? Patching, which some people don't know what patching is, but it's like when you get Windows updates, those are patches. Think about, applying patches to holes, right? And remember here's another one, tip or trick, right? With antivirus and with endpoint detection and response and this kind of software that's supposed to protect you and with firewalls that are supposed to protect you, you're only as good as your last update or patch. Remember, the biggest threats are the latest updates or patches. So what we do is we have our eyes on everything and basically not literally looking at the computers, but we get the alerts. And, if a computer is out of compliance or hasn't been patched in 7 days, if someone from our help desk team is calling that end user to say, look, I'm really sorry to bother you, but I really need you to reboot your machine. I got to get these security patches in here, not just for Windows, not just for Mac, but for Adobe and Outlook and you name it, Slack. All of these different softwares have different, patches that are coming out to make sure that they're being safe from the latest threats, right? So antivirus and firewall, you're only as good as your last update. We talk about that a lot. Keeping eyes on systems and the patching and monitoring of even things like low health drive, a low disk space for health, hard drive health. Any kind of fans are heating up. We can get ahead of that end user who is like really mad that their computer just crashed out. We want to be proactive about that kind of stuff. And then encryption of the machines. So in case you lose anything, it's really basically the law in almost every state now. And then also, last but not least, I'll go with encrypted messaging. So, and by the way, these are all things that pretty much every business owner already owns. They just need to implement it. Like if you're on Office 365 or Google Workplace, you would set up what's called DLP, data loss protection, to make sure that, let's say you send a social security number in an email, a bank account in an email, even a phone number at this point is kind of considered PII, personal identifiable information, although I think we don't want everything to go into these encrypted portals. But you probably know what I'm talking about. When you get your tax return, you got to go into like this encrypted portal, and like that's how you retrieve your tax return or bank information or whatever. But most businesses are supposed to do that if they're emailing PII all over the place. And if their clients or their lawyers or their accountants, and if they have clients that are lawyers and accountants or big Fortune 1000 companies that have compliance issues, they're going to freak out the first time, if you email them and you have a private attachment, it's not being encrypted because of compliance purposes, because compliance goes downhill, right? So, I think we could, the monitoring, the patching, the security awareness training, two-factor authentication, encryption, backup and disaster recovery is maybe the next area we could talk about. But from a security perspective, we did cover a lot that are easy to implement.
Right. So in terms, so those are the steps. But again, like from the security perspective, anything else that you want to say on that?
On the security perspective, just having a watchful eye on everything that's going on. I'll say onboarding and offboarding, right? So, we talk about onboarding and offboarding a lot being super important. So whenever we onboard a new client, we write up their onboarding process for our clients and users, right? So when they hire someone, here's all the steps they're going to take. And then for security purposes, how important is offboarding, right? God forbid there's a client, an end user who's doing something shady, or you need to fire them, or whatever it is. How quickly can you lock them out of all your systems, right? So the offboarding process is really important as well.
Sure. So give me some examples. Maybe you can share with our listeners some examples of key things, important things that have to be done when onboarding a new employee and also when offboarding an employee.
Well, for onboarding a new employee, it's really more functional, right? So phone, email, signature, what files do they got access to? What departments are they in? Where are they going to be setting? Which computer are they using? Track it to inventory, right? Sometimes the newest employee might get, like if it's like an intern or something, maybe that person's going to get a VIP's old computer, and then you get the VIP a new computer, right? And get them a faster one, right? So you can manage all that, with processes and systems of, inventory, right? Because everyone went home, our office has become like a, warehouse for all of our clients' computers. So they're sending us the computers. We get them ready. We put on the, endpoint detection and response, antivirus, our monitoring systems, the patching systems, make everything ready for these people, usernames and logins. So send it to their homes. And on that day one, that we just want them to start working. So onboarding think about how much money you can lose if someone starts and they don't have their computer and they're not ready to work, right? And it's also a bad experience. So we don't want them to have a bad experience with their new job. And then in terms of offboarding, it's really about locking people out, and wiping the computers, remotely, or locking them out and making sure no one can see that data. It's super duper important. So, if they didn't connect to the internet, then the hard drive needs to be encrypted, right? If they did connect to the internet, then it wipes their computer, right? So, these are all things in onboarding and offboarding. Offboarding also, it's like, think about what happens when you let go of someone. What else do you have on an offboarding checklist? And just to go back to the point of this conversation, right? Checklist, processes, procedures, right? So
Yeah.
who gets their emails? Do you want them to have an auto reply? Do you want it to be a forwarding? These are all these little things that you have to think about every time you offboard someone.
Right. And if you don't want to think about it every single time, that's where you create a system so you can actually have a checklist. And I know, Danny, you are very big on processes and procedures. You actually have a person in your organization that's their function, is to write those processes and procedures, right?
Yeah, we call him the librarian, but he's our full-time documentation expert. All he does is, if my technicians basically don't have a help desk ticket in a knowledge-based article in their help desk ticket to help them and guide them through troubleshooting a process, like a firewall being down or a computer going slow, anything in between, then they know to start recording that session, send it over to Ken, our librarian, and he makes a beautiful document out of it and puts it in our knowledge base, which we call IT glue in our business. So we're pretty nuts about it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's amazing. So let's talk about the importance of doing that. Like, how do you feel it changed your ability to run your business successfully by having those processes documented?
Well, it made it so people can learn how we do things much quicker. We hired like 12, 13 people over the last couple of months, and it's hard to get them to knowing the Contango way of doing things, right? Or the GRSee way of doing things. So having, the documentation of that is really helpful. And same thing with what's the Contango way of troubleshooting a slow computer. Some people think it's run a couple tools and leave the end user. No, not at all, right? First of all, is asking a lot of questions. What's actually slow, right? When I'm interviewing people and they're like, oh, just run this disk defrag and do this and do that. Meanwhile, an actual end user, this is how you know people have experience. If an actual end user, when they say my computer's running slow, it can mean anything. It can be the internet is slow. It can mean the computer's slow. It can mean Outlook is slow. It can mean the freaking monitor is not coming on and it's just slow to boot up. And we've seen our people say, yeah, can you just turn the computer on, right? We do that a lot with end users, unfortunately, right?
For sure.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things that are, so it's good for training. It's good for troubleshooting. It's good for a lot of things to have great documentation.
Absolutely. So what would you say in terms of, as a business owner, your return on investment was? Doesn't necessarily, we don't have to get into the monetizing part of it, but in terms of what did you get out of it by actually having well-documented processes in terms of being able to train somebody faster and in terms of having that consistency? So what would you say was the biggest return? Because you had to, you're basically investing a lot in it. You have a full-time position just for documentation, right? And you're basically making the technicians start recording and then somebody writing it, etc. So what would you say was your biggest return, or what is the return on investment on doing that?
I think, well, that's a great question. I have to sit down for this. No, but what's the return on investment? I don't think it's really measurable in a good way. I think that it's really important for customer satisfaction. I mean, what is measurable? It is measurable. Customer satisfaction is measurable. And, the more documentation and process and procedures we have, the happier customers are. What else is measurable is employee retention and happier employees, right? So, when technicians come to work for us, one of the first things they say is, I cannot believe how great the documentation is here. I am so comfortable and so happy knowing that, I have that kind of support. And the business has that kind of understanding of how important documentation is, right? So then there's that. And then there's scalability, happiness. What you've heard of growth pains, right? So we've been through growth pains before. And the more documentation processes and procedures you have, in our, you're familiar with entrepreneur operating system, right? Traction and EOS. And, And, our, VTO, or our purpose and our target, our 5-year target or 10-year target, whatever, both of them, is to not just get to a certain size, but for it to be easy, for the job to be easy, for what we do is to be easy. And to be easy, it means hiring the right people, right person, right seat, right? It means hiring the right people. And it also means giving them the right tools, giving them the right support, having, the right processes. But yeah, we, being the best IT company, right? Like having all the automation, having a self-help portal for the end users, right? There's all these things that are driving us to making, we don't want to grow like crazy. We want to grow like crazy. Don't get me wrong, but we don't want to grow like crazy if we're going to be miserable.
Oh, for sure.
So when we grow, we want it to be easy growth that we're really nailing. So all of that goes back to documentation. So while I can't necessarily put an ROI on it, I can measure all the other things, and they're on the up and up right now.
That's great. Out of curiosity, what do you recommend how to measure customer satisfaction? That was the first one that you named.
Sure. So in our business, we use a tool called Crewwho, and I think you'll really like it. It's really cool. So basically, when a ticket is closed, the customer can give a smiley face or a sad face, right? Or, middle face. And they could put in comments, this, that, and the other thing. And when they put that smiley face, the technician working on it automatically gets, like, let's call it 100 points. Okay. Then on top of that, anyone in the business can go into Crewwho and give out badges. Certainly 6 of the badges are our 6 core values, right? We are professional. We stay in Contango. We keep charging forward. We work together and support each other. We're obsessed with the customer experience. We do the right thing. Those are our 6 core values, right? And so at any time, I can see that someone on my team is embodying one of those core values, and I can jump in and I can say, I'm going to give this guy 1,000 or girl 1,000 points for doing something that I thought was professional, or showed that they were frustrated but kept pushing through, kept charging forward, right? And now they take all those points between the customer satisfaction, which, by the way, we're measuring. To answer your question, yes, we measure the smiley faces and all that. That's huge. But taking it one step further, now they take all these points that they have accumulated and they get to go buy things in a store. So they can buy iTunes gift cards or Amazon gift cards, or, one of them is like lunch with the CEO or a snack with the CEO. You have to have a lot of points for that. The way the story goes is the people that like invented Crewwho, snack with the CEO was a private plane, to California to go jump off a plane, right? Do this all funny stuff. For me, it's not going to be any of that because I'm too scared of doing any of that stuff, but it'll probably be like a nice restaurant or something, hang out a little bit and go a little above and beyond. It's not going to be a snack, right? But more importantly, I think they'd rather an iTunes gift card rather than hang out with me, but maybe that's a different issue, right? So, but yeah, that's how we track what's called CSAT, right? Customer satisfaction.
That's fantastic. That's a great advice right there. It's a system on how to actually measure it, and it makes things easier because you know that you can actually you know what to expect, and you're being measured on it. So that's fantastic, Danny. Really
Thanks.
Good advice here.
Working on it.
Yeah. So did you start, let's say there are listeners right now that are listening to us and they're thinking, well, maybe I will start documenting later at some point, but right now I just have to produce. I have to make sure I'm growing my business. I have to make sure that, I'm servicing all my customers or clients. I mean, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think that this is the perfect time to do that. And I will say, we never really hired anyone that didn't have a playbook, whose, when we hired them, were told, look, this is one of the positions where we don't have a playbook and you're going to be making it, because no one's going to know it better than you as we're training you. Do a lot of videos, and then they can take those videos and they can, make playbooks out of it. But if someone told me what you just said, I would say that's not an excuse, because you're just doing your daily job and recording it, right? You're not necessarily having to take other time to do that. And frankly, with the worldwide, economy or the ability to staff your business worldwide. I mean, we have 40 people in Israel. We have 20 people in the Philippines. We may hire someone in India just because he came very, very highly recommended. And, we have someone in Dallas, we have people in New York, right? Like, so there's no excuse not to get a document. Like when we started hiring in the Philippines, now we have about 3 people. One is dedicated to documentation librarian, but definitely 2 other people do documentation and processes and procedures all the time. We've been doing it that way for about 6 years. So there's no excuse not to get someone at a very affordable price, at least, who, by the way, is an expert. We only hire experts. Like when we hired Ken for documentation, I mean, he was doing documentation. He was doing that job for a huge company, and he was managing a team of documenters, right? Like only hire experts. We say who, not how, right? Don't try to figure it out. Who's the person that's just going to do it best, right? Hire experts. So, I would say it's an excuse. So I would probably push back on that if someone said, I don't have time for that or something like that.
Sure. Great advice. All right. So what is the Contango for Contango?
Great question. We have a new brand that I'm super excited about, a new website launching, new messaging, new everything. I mean, this logo is gone, even though it's, with me for a very, very long time. We are part of our new brand, and our launch is definitely going nationwide and speaking to nationwide, because it seems to be a huge strength for us, nationwide support. Our buyer persona is more targeted than it's ever been. It's really, businesses that have about 10 to 100 employees that use computers, and it's certainly nationwide. Reaching out to those people, creating lists, reaching out to them, adding value, free assessments, free security awareness training, just providing as much value as we can. And then we know at some point, maybe they could become customers, and we think we're going to scale and grow pretty quickly with that strategy. We have all the emails ready, those drip marketing emails. You want to talk about cybersecurity, here's a great article, here's some stuff, here's a checklist. If it could help, let us know. Or here's free 6 months of security awareness training. We're happy to do that for you and your business. Qualify, right? So, we have a lot of marketing initiatives, because to get the, there's that I think is a book called, but also that phrase, what got you here won't get you there, right? And so, where we are right now, it's a little different. We've been 100% referral based, but now we want to triple up in 3 years. And that's different. That means you have to do a lot of different things and really reach out to your potential customer and add value. So we're really excited about it. Keep hiring, keep going global in terms of staffing, diversifying a little bit in terms of staffing. What else can we do for our clients to add more products and features to create stickiness, right? So there's a lot that we can do different, more, better. And we're going to just keep improving always. And like, as far as improving internally, we do a lot of company culture stuff, but we didn't feel like we were like about all that crew stuff is all about company culture, but we didn't have data behind how happy people are. So, one of the things that's a goal for this month in February is the surveying system, where it's going to go out to every single employee. I don't know if we decided how often. I think at least every month. Could be 2 questions, like how happy, anonymous, how happy are you working at Contango IT? And next question, I don't know yet, we'll figure it out, but
Sure.
I need that feedback loop, because I don't want to ever have a situation where the culture is suffering because of growth or because of something that somebody's doing. Like, I want to get ahead of it.
For sure. Absolutely. Culture is super important. And you want to make sure that as you grow, you are developing the right culture. So people, we talked about employee retention. So you want to make sure that you're retaining them. Fantastic. Well, Danny, that's been a great, you provided amazing information to our listeners. I learned a lot. I love the process. So it's more also the policy of what you have to put in place in order to ensure that you have that your cybersecurity compliant, and what is the process in order to get there. And your advice also to business owners to just document and what it has done for you and how you measure it. So fantastic information. Thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
No, my pleasure. Anytime. And, as always, anyone anyone listening, even if it's second opinion, advice, anything on technology, cybersecurity, IT, infrastructure, please leverage me and use and abuse my personal time. I'm not billable or anything like that. So I always want to add value, and always love, interacting with other entrepreneurs, seeing how we can grow, learn together.
Absolutely. So Contango IT, and can they is there a contact there that they can go to any of the social media?
I would say best thing to do is put in Danny Mizrahi Contango in LinkedIn, and, reach out, or, contangoit.com, or my email is Danny Mary at contangoit.com. And yeah, I'd love to speak with anyone.
Awesome. Fantastic. And yes, definitely, I encourage our listeners to reach out. Danny is a wealth of information, and he's always very happy to share that. So thank you again, Danny.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.